Okay, so let's start. Good morning, everyone. We can see there's people still joining. Welcome. I hope everyone is well and keeping safe. Welcome to our weekly Thursday Webex sessions. This session will be recorded and be in our page in case you want to check this information again or share with a colleague later. Any questions you may have today during this presentation, you'll be able to ask them at the end of the presentation. So don't worry, any questions, I will be able to help you out with. My name is Gabriel, as some know, some don't know. I am the Business Development Manager here at Technorizing UK, and today's webinar we will be covering a new exciting encryption file software called Prot-On. With us today, we have the CEO and founder of Prot-On, Mr. Oscar Mary Richard. Welcome, and many thanks for being here. Can you hear me at all, Oscar?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly well. Hi, everyone connected to this webinar. Okay, so, well, as Gabriel told, Prot-On is a information rights management solution. I want to introduce that. But first of all, if you visit our web, proton.com, well, here you can find the next video that I'm going to show that I think that explains Prot-On very well. I'm going to play the video now. It's a 3-minute video, and after that I will explain a little further what the solution is.
What is Prot-On? Prot-On is an application that guarantees that the information you share on the internet, photographs, Microsoft Office documents, emails, blog entries, will only be seen by people you have authorized to see it. At any time, even after you've sent the document, you can decide who can see your information and what they can do with it. Only read it, print it, edit it, etc. When and for how long? Prot-On runs on PCs, smartphones, and tablets. It doesn't matter where your information ends up. It will always be under your control. Prot-On is very easy to use and is free for basic functionality. How does Prot-On work? Once you've downloaded Prot-On on your device and have registered, you will be able to protect the information you want in just one click. The information you want to protect will be encrypted with a key. Without it, no one will be able to decrypt it. The document key will be saved in your Prot-On key closet in the cloud. Now you can send your encrypted information to anyone you want as you usually would, by email or by uploading it to the cloud. After this, you need to label the document key, identifying who can access the document. Prot-On makes it very easy. When the recipient clicks on the protected document, Prot-On will look in your key closet to see if he has access to the document. Only if he does will he be able to decrypt the document. If the recipient resends the encrypted information to an unauthorized person, he will not be able to decrypt it, since you have not given them permission, and his name is not on the key label. If after you've sent the document, you change your mind and no longer want someone to access it, all you have to do is take away his right to the key. The recipient will continue to have the document you sent him, but will no longer be able to decrypt it. Prot-On never saves user documents. It only manages keys and permissions. Why use Prot-On? With Prot-On, it's easy to share a personal photo, knowing it will only be visible to those authorized to see it. Present a project proposal without worrying that it will be copied or about loss of intellectual property. Send medical records to hospital patients while maintaining confidentiality. Exchange legal documents with clients or colleagues in your law firm. Control the amount of time an auditor or external consultant can view a document. Send confidential emails. Ensure strategic information being shared at the executive board level doesn't get out. Enable firms to comply with data protection laws. Prot-On. Protect what you share.
Well,
Wait.
let me share the slide.
What?
Good, sorry, I'm sharing again. Okay, so I think that the video explains quite well what is Prot-On. But well, anyway, we have a clear need of protecting information. In this day, we are continually sharing confidential information through the cloud, and especially in this lockdown situation and with the home working, that well, I think that it will stay here. These changes after the COVID. Well, we have living big changes in digital transformation, and we have to share information in ways that well, we were not doing before. So just to put IRM technology, information right management technology, into the context of security solution, well, we have a lot of encryption solutions, secure mail, secure storage, mobile device management, or DLPs, data loss prevention or data leak prevention. All these solutions are focused to keep the information protected into the boundaries of the company. But when we send information to the recipients that have to receive the information, after that moment, we don't know what they are going to do with the information. We don't know if they are going to share in a secure way, to upload to not secure platforms, or to share this information with third parties. So at this point, IRM technology is the only technology that still allows to keep control on the information. Why? Because the information, the files, are always encrypted. Even when the recipients are using these files, the files physically in the disk are still encrypted, are only decrypted in the memory of the application to view the document when the user has the appropriate grants or permissions to do that. Okay, so Prot-On is an IRM, and as an IRM, it has three main functionalities. First, to encrypt files, then manage the permission, deciding who can read, print, edit, and protect information, provide permissions to third party. And the third function is track documents use. So we can know who is accessing our information, when he did, from where, what device, what IP address, and what this user did with the information. If just read, if they provide permissions to other, they printed the files, everything is recorded, and we have this traceability. So all this protection works dynamically. So at any time, even after the files have been distributed, we can know, or we can change the permissions remotely. So adding or removing permissions at any time, like remote control over the files, because we have this console, this permissions management through a web console. So it's the same how many copies or physical copies of the file have been distributed. We can add or remove permissions to any user. So additionally to this main functionality of an IRM, ProtOn provides additional features. First, it can be used as a classification tool. The administrator can define classification levels for the information accordingly to the classification of the information policy in the company, typically 3, 4, 5 levels: reserved, confidential, top secret, and so on. So we can classify our files, and this classification can be associated with encryption or not. We can have one level of classification as public information, and we don't know to protect this information with ProtOn, but for other levels, we want to protect, to encrypt the files, and also apply a specific protection policy. That's a protection policy, I mean, who will be able to access the file and with permissions. Okay. At this time, ProtOn offers manual classification of the files, but in the next release, just in a couple of months, we will release an automatic classification tool. This automatic classification that we can use for classifying all the files in a repository, or just to classify a new file that we are generating, to classify it automatically. This classification is based in two different or complementary algorithms. One is just to find patterns like a credit card number or the word confidential or something like that. These are just to match predefined patterns. And the other is the other engine that we have implemented is artificial intelligence, is machine learning. We can feed the system with with an amount of documents, so telling what is the appropriate classification level, and then after this machine learning period, the system by itself creates a model to classify new files. So this classification tool allows us to implement some data leak prevention rules. I want to clarify that ProtOn is not a DLP, but well, thanks to classification and the fact that we have a plugin for Microsoft Office, we can implement a few rules that are more like a DLP than like an IRM, okay? So these rules is, for example, to force the users to classify a file when we create in Office, or when we are sending an email with Microsoft Outlook, we can force the users to classify the attachment, or classify the attachment only if in the addressee the system finds email addresses that are external to the company. So the system could force the user to classify the attachment in these cases. So it has also other functionalities like version and integrity control, or we can identify that the document has been edited, and we save the digital signature of the files, so the owner can know if the recipients are accessing the last version of the file or not. We can remove the permissions to obsolete versions and so on. Also, well, I explained before that we have traceability about all the activity on the documents, and well, we can access this information through ProtOn. But also we can export all these events to a CM or to a log analyzer. And then, it's possible to program or to define new warnings or alerts using these systems. So Proton is not implementing a log analyzer as it is. So, but it can be sending this information to CMs that do this task very, very well. And also, in a complementary manner, we can offer this service complementary to the Proton service. We can offer from our own security operations center, we can offer this monitoring service. So what kind of events we can identify here is, for example, if it depends on the customers, but for example, some customers want to get an alert if someone is accessing their files from other country or for IP address geolocated in other country, or we want an alert if someone is printing a lot of documents in a short period of time. So these are the kind of abnormal behaviors that we can identify and take an action or a reaction about that. So, just to a brief introduction to the technical architecture of Proton. Proton is a client-server solution. In the server side, we are generating and storing the encryption keys that will be used to encrypt the files, and we manage the users and permissions. And in the client side is where the file is encrypted or decrypted and is shown to the user in our own viewers or readers, or with plugins in other applications like Microsoft Office, Word, Excel, or PowerPoint. We have a plugin for doing that. This client application is available in desktop environments and also in mobile devices, in iOS and Android. But sometimes we want to share information with external people that we don't know if they have a Proton installed, or even if they can install anything in their computers. So we provide also a web client. This web client allows the user just to access the protected document just through the web browser. Okay. So this web client additionally includes an API, an application programming interface, that allows us or our customers to develop their own connectors to other systems like storage solutions or ERPs or whatever. The development of these connectors is quite simple. That is what to call some web services in Proton in order to encrypt a file or in order to provide permissions to some users, and just to link to the viewer and so on. So it's very easy to integrate with other solutions. Typically, we have developed some connectors for SharePoint or even for cloud public storage solutions like Google Drive or whatever. So with all this information, just to summarize that we have different ways to use Proton. First, as I said, with the Proton client installed in our device. Another option is through the web browser using the web client without installing anything in our devices. Other way is what we call protonized folders. A protonized folder is, well, we select a folder in our file system and we configure this folder as protonized, assigning a protection policy who people can access and what permissions they will have. So after that moment, Proton monitors the folder and all the files there or the new files that we drop in the folder are automatically protected, and these protection policies apply to these files. So this is a mechanism that allows just to have this protected folder. Especially it's useful in organization if we do that in network shared folders. So the final user just have to drop files in this folder to get it protected, or just other users can access the files there to open in their devices, but they don't have to worry about how to manage permissions and so on, because the administrator did this work for them, just to configure some folders with the appropriate permissions. This also allows us to integrate with directly with some tools like business intelligence tools like SAP, for example, or whatever, where we can configure the folders where we can export information as PDF or as Excel or so on. If we configure that the folder for exportation is a protonized folder, we are achieving that all the information that is extracted from these repositories is automatically encrypted and protected with Proton. And finally, the fourth via to use Proton is with developing these connectors that are using our API, our web services in the application programming interfaces. Okay, so this is the complete picture of how to use Proton. Just to conclude this presentation, just introduce a little bit our business model. So Proton can be offered as as a software as a service solution in our services, or it can be installed on premises. Okay, so in our software as a service solution, we offer the service in a freemium model. So you can register for a free service with a lot of limitation in the number of files you can protect or the features you have, but it's for free. And of course, if we are a company and we want to share protected information to individuals, to home users, we can do that without consuming or investing in a huge number of licenses in Proton, because these individuals or home users or our partners can register in Proton by themselves with a free account. Okay, so we have the internet channel that provide access only to a subset of the functionality of Proton, and the full functionality, or what we call the corporate service, is offered to our customers only through our partners network. Okay. So, this is what I wanted to explain in this with these slides about Proton. Now I would like to do a short demo of how to use Proton. Okay. So First, I'm going to show how to use Proton with the Proton client installed in your device. So I have here this icon here in the notifications area. This tri-icon is the icon from Proton. Proton is running, and it says that my user, Oscar, is logged into the system. So when we install the Proton client, also, well, it's integrated in the Explorer. So if we want to protect a file, just, well, right-click. We have here this Proton entry, and from here, oh, sorry, because it's configured in Spanish now. Well, I can change, but it's just only for that. I have here three options: protect with a specific protection policy, or classify the file. Now I'm going to protect. So now I got the file protected. In my configuration, or I've configured the system to keep the original file, but well, it can be configured to remove the original file. So I keep now both the original and the protected file. So it was with images, Office documents, PDF, video, audio, whatever. So also, if we work with an Office document, we have a complement to show that it was loading the complement when launching the Office, the Word. So for protecting a file, I have here the Proton plugin that allows also the same features, the same functionalities. I'm going to protect. So the first time I protect the file, it requires a well, a little bit of time because it has protected the file now. Now it's going to close the file and open it again, opening the protected version. Well, I think that with GoToMeeting it's, let me see. I'm going to stop the presentation and let me do it again. It's protecting, but I think that, well, the GoToMeeting running is doing something here because I don't know what is not protecting. Okay, this is problems with live meetings. Well, anyway, so it should be protected also from the plugin in the same way that we can protect, as I said, doing here, for example, with this other document, just with right click. Okay. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to show is what we call the ProtOn folder that I explained before. So I'm going to create a folder. I'm going to call it ProtOn folder. Even I can create inside a subfolder. And I'm going to open this here. And I'm going to protect this folder. So Proton, protonize folder, and just I'm going to select the protection policy I'm going to use. For example, this default policy. I will explain later what protection policy is. So I say that I include subfolders and go on. So now the folder is protected, and now I'm going to get some files. For example, these 3 files. And I'm going to this subfolder. I copy the files, and then automatically get protected, and the protection policy that I define is automatically applied to these files. So if we want to manage the permissions, the protection policies, if we want to know who is accessing the files, all this can be done through the web console. So that's from the file. I'm going to manage permissions. So, well, here it's configured in English. In my client application, it was in Spanish. I can change here, but well, anyway, in this web console, I can see this file that I select, that it has not classification, and it has this protection policy working. What is the protection policy? Well, the protection policy consists of this permissions matrix, to say what users or groups of users have permissions to access the file. In this case, it's just my user has full access, also all the people in my company, and also this additional user. If in this case, for this specific file, I want to provide further permissions to other users beyond what is defined by the protection policy, I can do that. So I can write here an email address. So if the user is registered in Proton, it's just to add to the system. If the user is not registered, I can invite this user. So the user will receive an email to register in Proton. Okay, I can personalize the message. Okay, but before the user accepts the invitation or get registered in the system, I can add the user to the permissions. So I can provide to these users the permissions that he will have once he is registered in Proton. So this is the permissions defined by the protection policy that is generic and is dynamic. At any time, the owner of the policy or the administrator can add or remove permissions in this policy. But specifically for this file, and because I have the managed permission of the file, I can add a permission to this specific file. Additionally to these permissions, the policy also defines other things. For example, that if we open the file, it has to show a watermark with the word confidential and also with the username of the user accessing the file and the timestamp. How this watermark has to appear, the opacity, where it appears, and so on. So if I open one of these protected files, for example, this image, so you can see that this watermark is shown with the word confidential, the timestamp, and also the user, Oscar, that is opening the file. Also, we can define a validity period, a time range where the document can be opened. So we can say that the file cannot be opened before a date or after a date. Or we can define in the policy that this time range is defined at the time of protecting the file. So when I protect a file, it has a validity period of 1 hour, for example. I can define this in the protection policy. Other important point is the offline use. As I explained until now, when I want to open a file, my client application connects to the Proton server. The Proton server has to check that I have permissions to open the file. In this case, the client application is allowed or gets the encryption key from the server and opens the file. Well, if I enable the offline use for 24 hours, in this case, it means that if after opening the file, I lost the connection to internet, during these 24 hours, I will be able to continue using the file even without being connected to the internet. Okay. Also, we can limit the number of devices that a user can use for accessing the file. This is, well, oriented mainly to avoid the user sharing their own credentials to third party. Okay, so I can limit to a number of devices, no more than my PC and my tablet, for example, so 2 devices per user. Okay, and also we can define or to require a second authentication, a two-factor authentication when the recipients are going to open the file. So it will require a 6-digit that will be provided by the typical mobile application like Google Authenticator or so on. So this is what is a protection policy. So when in an organization, in a company, what we are providing is an administration level where the administrators can define this protection policy, and also can in order to provide users and groups of users, they can integrate with an Active Directory or LDAP servers. And well, we have some other configuration tools. So when we have users and groups in the system, we can assign the role of administrators to other users, and we can lock a user that is leaving the company, so we can lock the user so he cannot access any protected information. So we have a lot of functionalities that I'm not going to go now in details. And also, well, we have as administrators some reports that allow us to, as administrators, to keep the control over all the information protected by our employees. So, for example, I can go to any user to see what files he has protected, and for any of these files, as I am the administrator, I can go inside the details of the protection, and I could even to manage the permission. Of course, every change that I'm doing with the permissions will be registered in the activity of the file. Okay, just to conclude, well, I explained we have also a web client, so we wouldn't need to have the Proton client installed. So to open a file, it will be as easy as to drag and drop the file that I want to open. Okay, so this is just in the web browser. In this case, I wouldn't need any plugin or whatever in order to read the file. Also, we can see that we have the watermark. As I explained, we can control the opacity or how bothered this watermark to the users, and we can access this. And also, just as a quick example, I would like to show a kind of integration with web application using the application programming interface that Proton provides. In this case, it's a simple page that is going to show a file, a repository of protected information. In fact, it is a web front to a Protonized folder. Okay, so I have integrated with Proton for a single sign-on. So as I'm protected in Proton, as I'm logged in Proton, I have the login in this website. And well, some things that we can do here is just from this web page, we can link to our web viewer. So just clicking the file, we can open it in the web viewer. Okay, or we can use this API, for example, to share information with other users. So when the user receives the email, clicking the link will go also to the web viewer. Okay. So, well, I think it's a lot of information. So I think is enough at this point, and I will go now to questions and answers. If you have any question at this time.
Okay, thank you so much, Oscar, for the presentation. Very insightful. As you mentioned, now we have some time for Q&A. For the attendees still here, feel free to drop any question in the question box on the right side of your screen. Let's just give 10 to 15 seconds, Oscar, to see if there's further questions, and I'll start shooting at you. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So the first question that we have here from one of the attendees is first question is Proton related to Proton email by any chance?
No, it is not. Well, Proton Mail is a solution just oriented to mailing. Okay. It provides encryption for mailing and so on, but only for that. It's a different company. At the beginning, when they launched the product, we were thinking to do legal actions, but it was not, or our lawyer said that it was not worth it. So that we are sharing a very similar name, but we have nothing to do with them.
Okay, good. Thanks for the clarification. And the first question that we have here is another question is what type of business normally Proton work with?
Well, mainly or briefly, all of them. Well, as you can imagine, every business has the necessity of protecting confidential information. So we have all sizes of customers, from big customers to just professionals with a premium account. in all sectors. So from, I don't know, a lot of engineering companies to protect intellectual property. Also, it's very common for small publishers or universities, or well,
at the end of the day, so Proton will be useful for any vertical or any size of business at the end of the day, right?
That's really good. Right. And more in this, well, what I said at the beginning, well, with this lockdown and the increasing of home working, we are living an acceleration of the digital transformation in all the sectors. And now, well, we are introducing these technologies in a lot of business processes that, well, in the past or until now, we were more lazy to do. And now this is accelerating, and I'm sure that is going to stay for e-learning, for well, other typical use case is in steering committees and in directors boards, where well, they want to share information very, very confidential, and they want this information is secure, there is protected. And now this process is done with home working, so it's more necessary than before.
Okay, so one of the main things that we can see now from Proton, remote working, the solution is to help them protecting their emails, email attachments, also protecting Office files, PDF, photos, audio, and video. So pretty much everything. So it's very useful. And just in terms of comparing and summarize the benefits of Proton when we compare to other encryption systems, could you just summarize a little bit the difference and why Proton is a better solution and more efficient than others?
Well, it's I wouldn't say that's better, but complementary. So we have encryption solutions, and we need to encrypt our files when they are stored in the cloud, or just encryption solutions to encrypt our drives, our hard disk. But this is complementary with a solution like Proton, because Proton allows us to ensure that the file is still protected when we download the file from this storage, when we send this file by email and the recipients open the file. So the main difference is that, well, other encryption solutions provide encryption for well, in transit and in rest, usually set, but Proton offer encryption also in use. So the file is always encrypted, even when the user is reading it in Office or in the PDF viewer or whatever. The copy in the disk, the file remains encrypted.
Great. Thanks for that. And just if the management is in the cloud, is how simple is to update the encryption policy?
Well, I showed that before. It's just to define the policy as an administrator. Is as easy to go to the policy. Okay, for example, I used before this default policy. I can manage from here, and I could remove the permissions to the user, or remove only the copy permissions, so this user is not going to be able to unprotect. Just from this moment, the work is done. So if this user try at this time to unprotect a file that he could unprotect 5 minutes ago. Now it's not able to do that. If I want to provide permissions to some of my groups of users, it's just to add from here and apply the permissions I want. For example, read and edit. It's quite forward. And also the properties. If I think that 15% of opacity is too much, I can reduce to 5%. And this is working right from now. If I want to establish a time of life for my documents, I can do it now. And this applies just for this moment, just saving these changes.
That's really great. It's very simple and very user friendly, the solution. So it's very good. So just moving here, Oscar, I think we're good in the questions. Just mentioning, if you could go back to the last slide, just so we can share the contact information. As Oscar mentioned before, very interesting for people who could be interested in the solution or have the curiosity of trying. At the moment, ProtOn is offering 3 months so for free opportunity to use it. So if you have any interested, you can see the email here, cyberinquiries@technorizingroup.com. If you have the interest in trying the solution, just pop us an email there, or any questions, further questions on ProtOn. You can see also Mr. Oscar email here. Further questions, feel free to drop us any email. We are here to help, and hopefully we can speak further regarding the solution opportunity. And next week we'll be doing another Thursday Webex. So stay tuned, and thank you so much, Oscar. Again, thank you so much for all the information. Thanks ProtOn for this amazing solution, and hope to speak to you soon. Take care, guys. All the best.
Okay, thank you very much for all of you, and for Horizon for this opportunity. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.